Hello and welcome to this week's episode of my series of strange and unexplained phenomena of the South Mountains of North Carolina. I am your host, Kaiser Rebel. This is episode 15 and I have titled it Susan's Story. Now the topic of this week's episode is a phenomenon known as the black-eyed children or the black-eyed kids, commonly abbreviated as BEK. It is a topic I knew very little about. I knew some reports came from around the country, specifically some reports out of the Appalachians. But beyond that, I knew very little. And I immediately consulted with some people in the field of paranormal research, and across the board, the reaction seemed to be the same, that this was a sinister thing, that by its very nature, it was sinister and dark, and that it was something not to be taken lightly. And so I began to research the topic, and at some point, I just cut my research short, and I had planned on doing a two-part episode and focusing in the first part of the episode heavily on the history, on the origins, the theories, and that type of thing, and then the second part of the episode on Susan's story. But I decided to do it differently. I'm going to share with you just a brief picture of the history of the phenomena, the ideas, and the theories on what this phenomena means, where do they come from, what are they. But I want to present to you in its entirety, without abbreviating it at all, Susan's story. Even if it means being a multi-part episode. Quick research reveals that this phenomenon supposedly was first reported on a mass basis by a man named Brian Bethel in Abilene, Texas in 1996. Just a cursory search of the internet and YouTube, I found an account from the late 1800s, an account from 1918 in Texas, an account from the mountains of Virginia in the 1950s, just to name a few. I believe that this phenomenon has existed at minimum in folklore for a very, very long time, and I feel like it probably originated from an isolated rural area such as the Appalachian Mountains or the Appalachian Foothills, but I don't know. I do know that there's many reports that's come in from many different places. A lot of speculations on what this phenomenon means, what these entities are. Some say they're demons, some say aliens, some say they're disgruntled spirits taking the form of children to disarm their intended victims. Some associate them with cursed ground. Some associate them with unmarked graves. Some associate them with Native American burial grounds. There's no shortage of ideas on this phenomenon. But rather than to talk about all of that, I'm simply going to present to you Susan's story, and you can decide things for yourself and do your own research. Susan, and this is not that's not her real name. You see, her story came to me from beyond the grave. And by that, I mean that her account was shared with me from Dave, who described himself as her lifelong partner and best friend, and that he just felt that it was important to share her story finally with the world. Susan grew up not too far from the western end of the South Mountains, and she was the daughter of a mechanic, the daughter of a stay-at-home mom. They had a small farm there, where they raised vegetable crops, raised hogs and chickens. And she was particularly proud that her maternal grandmother was of Cherokee descent. Her father's people had deep roots in the area where she grew up. And now Susan was an only child, and she attended UNC Chapel Hill. And her father passed away while she was studying there at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And she graduated, and she elected to stay there, and she gained employment there in the Chapel Hill area and would come home from time to time to visit. But then in the mid-1990s, her mother passed away. So, of course, Susan came home to make the arrangements and to do all the things associated with that and to bury her mother. She found herself traveling back and forth on the weekends between Chapel Hill and her childhood home. And she even began to heavily consider relocating and coming back and living in the childhood home. She found that she was coming back home because she just simply felt closer to her father and her mother when she was there in the childhood home. She developed the habit on the weekends that she would stay of sitting on the back screened-in porch and, sipping coffee, turning her reading light on and reading on the back porch, getting lost in her thoughts as she peered off in the distance at the mountains. It was a time of peace for her until one Saturday night in late summer. As she sat on the back porch reading, the sun had just gone down. She looked off in the distance and movement caught her eye. Coming from the wooded area down the hill was 4 silhouettes, walking in a line shoulder to shoulder. And she said that at first she didn't feel anything other than curiosity. They apparently had emerged from the woods, and she was not alarmed in the least. She quickly surmised that the 4 figures were children. And then her curiosity was aroused. And so why would these children be emerging from woods that border on 100,000 acres of wilderness? Were they lost? Were they simply out playing? She was concerned but not alarmed. As the children came closer, Susan rose up out of her chair and was going to unlatch the latch on the screen door to greet the children. But as she reported to Dave, she was suddenly overcome by a panicked feeling, by a feeling of danger, a feeling of unexplained fear. She paused and lowered her hand back down and left the door latched. She was very aware, as she reports, she was acutely aware that the only thing that separated her from the source of this panicked feeling, of this unexplained fear, was the screen mesh on that back porch and the door. Not understanding why, she was getting ready to turn to retreat into the house. But just as she began to turn, she heard a child's voice say, "Miss Susan, we need your help." And the voice of the child was odd. It had an echoing quality to it, almost a metallic twang. It sounded, in her words to her friend Dave, otherworldly. And she thought, how do these children know my name? And as she just stood there in a stupor, more or less, again the child said, "Miss Susan, you must help us." All the while, these children were getting closer and closer to the back door of her screened-in porch. "Miss Susan, we need you." It was the same voice. It turned out, the one talking turned out to be the tallest of these children. It appeared that it was a boy, somewhere in the age of 12 to 13 years old. And they came within just a few feet from the steps of the back porch. And Susan was barely able to say, "What can I do to help you? Are you okay?" And that the male figure said, "We need to come in. Will you give us entry?" She found the wording to be uncanny and very strange, especially coming out of the mouth of a 12 or 13-year-old kid. Susan said, "Do you need me to call your parents? Do you need me to call the police?" And the voice said, "Miss Susan, we do not need the sheriff. You are able to help us. Let us come in." By then, the 4 children were directly at the back door, not offering to try to open the door, but just standing there, right at the very base of those couple of small steps. The first visual detail she noticed was the odd dress of these children. They were dressed like children of an older time. It put her in mind of black and white photographs that she'd seen from the early 1900s. And the clothing appeared to be all gray toned, except for the one female child in the group. And oddly enough, the female child was wearing baggy overalls with a gray shirt underneath, a shirt that appeared gray that had a floral pattern on it. We will pick up here in part 2 of episode 15. I will see you in a few minutes.